first thing Silas Mercer saw in Boot Hill was not a grave. It was a barefoot girl, half covered by a dirty blanket, shaking in the yellow grass like the ground itself had spit her out. Her hair was tangled with burrs and dust. Her cheek was swollen. Her knees were scraped raw from crawling, and the cloth on her shoulders was torn in a way that told the truth without needing words. Silas stopped so hard his horse stamped and snorted. Silas was 48, sunburned, and quiet. He had come to mourn. Then the girl lifted her face. Her eyes were open, but they looked like they had been forced open by fear. She stared at Silas as if he might be another cruelty with boots on. Silas set his flowers down beside the nearest headstone without even looking at the name. He took one step closer, slow, careful, palms open. The girl tried to scoot backward. Her body refused. Pain held her in place like a chain. Silas lowered his voice. "Easy, I'm not here to hurt you." Her lips trembled. She clutched the blanket tighter, as if the cloth was the last thing on earth that belonged to her. Silas scanned her fast, like a man reading smoke on the horizon. Bruises in the wrong places, marks that did not match a fall, a thin line of dried blood at the corner of her mouth, and a look in her eyes that said she had already begged people who enjoyed saying no. He swallowed once. "Can you tell me your name?" She blinked hard. Her voice came out hoarse, like it had been stolen and returned broken. "May." Silas nodded as if he would remember it forever. "All right." "May, where does it hurt?" May flinched at the question, not because it was wrong, but because it was kind. Her fingers shook as she pressed the blanket down over her thigh, then over her ribs, then over her shoulder, like she could not decide which pain was allowed to be seen. Silas crouched in the grass, far enough to give her space, close enough to catch her if she collapsed. He kept his eyes on her face, not on the torn cloth, not on the places that would turn her into gossip. "You need water." He reached for his canteen. May jerked, panic flashing. "No." Her throat worked. "Don't take me down there." Silas paused. "Down where?" May's eyes darted past him, toward the town below the hill. The rooftops of Dodge City shimmered in heat. A wagon creaked in the distance. May swallowed, then whispered the sentence like it was a secret that could get her killed. "If you carry me into town, he'll say I ran off with you, and they'll believe him." He'd already bought the first version of the story. Silas went still. "Your husband did this." Silas leaned a little closer, voice steady. "Who did this, May?" Her breath hitched. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. Tears were a luxury she did not trust. Then she looked down at the cloth in her lap, and she made a choice that looked like surrender, but sounded like defiance. "Do it right here," she begged. Silas blinked. "Right here." May nodded. Faster now. Desperate. "Please, just wrap it. Just make it stop. Right here." Silas's jaw tightened until the muscle jumped. He understood instantly. If he carried her through town, they would not see a wounded young woman. They would see a story, and stories in Dodge City spread faster than fire, especially when a woman was the kindling. Silas reached into his saddlebag and pulled out clean cloth and a small tin of salve. He tore a strip from his own shirt, slow, deliberate, no hurry that would scare her, no gentleness that would feel fake. "I'm going to touch your arm." He waited. May swallowed, then gave the smallest nod. Silas wrapped the cloth where she guided him, firm enough to hold, careful enough not to hurt. May sucked in a sharp breath, then bit down on her own sleeve to stay quiet. A person should not have to bite cloth to survive. As he worked, the wind shifted. Silas felt it before he saw it. That prickling sense, the land warning him that eyes were on them. He looked down the hill. A man stood near the cemetery gate, half in the shade of a fence post. Just watching, not coming closer, not calling out. Watching like he could not wait to tell someone what he saw. Silas's stomach dropped. May noticed the change in his face. Her voice came out thin. "Someone saw..." Silas finished the wrap, then covered her shoulders with the blanket again. Tucking it in like armor, he rose slowly, turning his body so May was behind him, shielded. The man at the gate did not move. He just stared a moment longer, then turned and walked toward town, fast. Silas exhaled through his nose. He knew that walk. That was the walk of a messenger carrying poison. May's fingers grabbed Silas's sleeve. Her voice shook. "He'll come, my husband. He'll come with men. And they'll be angry, not at him, but at you." Silas looked back at the grave he came to visit, the flowers now lying in dust beside a weathered headstone. He had promised his wife he would keep coming, but he had never promised the world he would stay quiet. Silas bent down, eyes locked on May. "Can you stand?" May tried, and her legs wobbled. She nodded anyway, because fear had taught her that weakness was dangerous. Silas offered his arm, steady as a fence post. May took it. If this town is willing to rage at a man for bandaging a woman in a graveyard, then what will they do when she tells them why she needed to beg in the first place? Silas did not like being watched, not in town, and sure not up on Boot Hill. That man who turned and hurried down the hill, Silas knew what that meant. By the time a horse could trot from the cemetery to Front Street, half the town would already have a story cooked up. And none of those stories would be kind to May. May gripped his sleeve like she was afraid the wind might take her away. Her voice came out small. "He'll come with men, and they'll be angry, not at him, but at you." Silas kept his eyes on the path, steadying her with his arm. "I've been blamed for worse." He tried to say it like a joke, but his jaw stayed tight. He guided her to his horse, and he did it careful. No rushing, no grabbing. He lifted her like she was made of glass, then settled her on the saddle and made sure the blanket stayed in place. May looked down the hill again. "I can't go back." Silas nodded once. "You're not going back." They rode out of Boot Hill with the sun beating down, and with the town below them pretending not to stare, but stares have a way of sticking. Silas could feel eyes on his back even when he could not see them. By the time they reached the ranch, May was fighting to stay awake. Her fingers loosened on his shirt. Silas slowed the horse. "Stay with me." He said it simple, like you would say to a tired dog on a long walk. May gave a weak sound that could have been a yes, or it could have been her trying not to cry. The ranch house was plain and quiet. Silas guided her inside and set a cup of water in her hands. May paused in the doorway like she was waiting for permission to breathe. Silas noticed, and it made his stomach turn. "You can sit." He pointed to a chair by the table. "It won't bite." May let out the smallest breath, almost a laugh. Then she winced like laughter hurt. She sat slow, keeping the blanket tight. Silas poured water and set it in front of her. May took a sip. Her eyes darted around, then landed on the mantel. May swallowed. "Your wife." Silas followed her gaze. Emily." He said the name like it still mattered, because it did. May looked down at her cup. "I'm sorry. If you're enjoying this story so far, go ahead and hit subscribe. It really helps a new channel grow. Now take a sip of tea, get comfortable, and tell me what time it is right now and where you're listening from." And that's when Silas noticed something in the bandage that changed everything. Silas nodded once, then he cleared his throat and pointed at the blanket. "Let me see what I wrapped." He kept his voice neutral, like they were talking about a horse with a limp. May hesitated. Her fingers trembled. Then she shifted the cloth just enough to show the bandage. Silas checked it fast. The swelling was bad, the bruising was fresh, and there was something else. Dirt and dried grass pressed into the fabric along one side. Not the kind you get from falling, the kind you get from being dragged. Silas's eyes went hard for a moment. Then he softened his voice again. "May, did he leave you up there on purpose?" May stared at the table. So long Silas thought she might not answer. Then she whispered, "He wanted me to be found. He wanted me to be seen like that, so I'd be too ashamed to talk." Silas felt a slow heat rise in his chest. Not the sun, something worse. May kept going, and her words came quicker now. Like once the door cracked open, it would not close. He can make the whole town believe anything. He buys drinks for the right men. He pays the right hands, and the deputy. She stopped, like the deputy's name was too dangerous to say out loud. Silas leaned back in his chair, eyes steady. "Klein, May's shoulders dropped. Yes. Silas tapped his finger once on the table. Slow, not angry, thinking. That kind of thinking that could get a man killed if he did it too long in the wrong place. Outside, a fly buzzed against the window. Somewhere far off, a cow lowed. Life went on, because life always did. May looked up at him, and her eyes were wide. What are you going to do? Silas held her gaze. I'm going to do the next right thing, then the next. And if your husband wants to bring trouble to my door, he can do it in the daylight. May's hands tightened on the blanket again. He'll come. And it won't be just words. Silas stood and walked to the cabinet. Pulling out clean cloth and salve, he set him down. Calm as Sunday morning, then he looked at May and spoke plain. You're safe right now, but I need you to tell me something. Does he keep records? May blinked. What? Silas nodded toward the window, toward the town that was already sharpening its gossip. Men like him always keep something, a ledger, an IOU, a list of favors, something that can bury the truth. May's lips parted. She did not answer right away, but her eyes did. Her eyes said yes. And right then, Silas heard it. A horse in the yard, then another, then the creak of leather, and the low sound of men talking like they owned the place. May went pale. Her voice barely worked. He's here. Silas did not rush. He did not panic. He just walked to the door and looked out, like a man answering a knock he had been expecting. Silas opened the door, and the heat rolled in like it owned the place. 3 horses stood in his yard, heads low, tails flicking flies, then more shapes behind them, men on foot, and a few folks who came just to watch. Deputy Horace Klein was out front, one hand resting near his belt like his badge was a weapon. Next to him stood Clay Caldwell, clean shirt, neat hat, face set in that calm public smile that never reaches the eyes. Clay called first, like they were neighbors chatting across a fence. Silas, good to see you. Where's my wife? Silas leaned one shoulder against the door frame. He did not step off the porch. He did not raise his voice. He just looked at Clay the way a man looks at a rattlesnake. Not scared, just focused. You brought half the county for a family talk. Silas said it flat, but there was a little edge in it. Clay chuckled, soft and friendly. You know how folks are. They worry. He glanced past Silas into the house like he owned the air inside. I'm here to take May home. Behind Silas. May made a small sound, not a sob, more like her breath caught on a memory. Klein lifted his chin. Silas, step aside. We're handling this proper. Silas didn't move. What's proper about leaving her in Boot Hill? That landed. A few of the watchers shifted their feet. A woman near the back pressed her lips tight, like she did not want to hear that part. Clay's smile stayed in place, but his eyes hardened. Now hold on. My wife got confused. She wandered. Maybe she fell. He shook his head like a man hurt by rumors. This town's already talking, and I'm trying to stop it. Silas almost laughed, but he kept it inside. May stepped closer to the doorway, still wrapped in that blanket. Her face was pale, but her eyes were awake now. She looked past Clay, past Klein, at the crowd. Clay's voice softened, like honey poured over a blade. May, sweetheart, come on out. Tell them you're fine. Tell them you just needed a rest. May's hands tightened on the blanket. Her lips moved, but nothing came out. Silas spoke without turning around. You don't have to say a word. Not to him, not to them. Klein took one step forward, boots crunching dried dirt. Silas, you're interfering. He pointed toward the yard. I've got men here. This can go easy, or it can go hard. Silas nodded. Slow. I see your men. I see the kind of men they are. That was when Clay did something slick. He didn't lunge. He didn't shout. He just tipped his head a little, like he was brushing a fly off his hat. And one of his ranch hands, a thick-necked fellow with mean eyes, stepped forward and called up to the porch. Well, look at that. Old Silas playing nurse. In a graveyard first, and now in his own house. He laughed, and a couple of men laughed with him. It was the kind of laugh that tries to turn cruelty into a joke, so nobody has to feel guilty. May flinched. Silas's eyes narrowed. Watch your mouth. Just saying what everyone's thinking. He took another step closer, then another, not toward Silas, toward the doorway, toward May. Silas stepped down off the porch, just one step. Calm, measured. Klein's eyes brightened a little, like he was hoping Silas would do something he could punish. Clay stayed back, still smiling, still clean, still careful, like he wanted the trouble without ever looking like he touched it. The ranch hand leaned in, voice ugly now. Come on, little lady. Your husband's being real patient. He reached one hand up toward the blanket. Silas's hand snapped out and caught the man's wrist. Not rough, not gentle, just final. Don't. The ranch hand jerked his arm, trying to pull free. He shoved Silas in the chest. That shove was what the whole crowd came to see. You could feel it. Half of them leaned forward like they were at a boxing match. Silas rocked back half a step, then came forward and hit the man once, clean and quick. The ranch hand stumbled into the dirt, surprised more than hurt. Surprise is what bullies hate most, Klein snapped, loud. That's assault. Silas looked at him. He reached for her. You saw it, and you did nothing. Klein's jaw worked. He did see it, and that was the problem. Clay finally spoke, voice sharp under the smile. Silas, you're making this worse. He looked at the crowd, spreading his hands like a preacher. Folks, you see what's happening? This man's got my wife, and now he's striking my workers. May stepped forward into the doorway, shoulders shaking. Her voice came out small, but it cut through the yard. He left me there. In Boot Hill, a hush dropped over the group. Even the horses went quiet for a beat. Clay's smile twitched, then he turned it back on, like a lamp. May, you're tired. You don't know what you're saying. Silas did not raise his voice, but he just said one sentence, steady as a fence line. She begged me to bandage her right there because she was terrified of you. That landed harder than any punch, because now the town had a choice. Laugh it off, or admit it sounded true. Clay's eyes locked on May. His voice dropped low enough that only she would feel it. You come home now. May's throat tightened. Her gaze flicked to Silas, then to the crowd again. She looked like a person standing on the edge of a cliff, trying to decide if the fall is better than the cage. Klein cleared his throat. We're leaving for now. He pointed at Silas. But this isn't over. Clay turned to go, but as he stepped away, his hand brushed his coat pocket. Quick, like he was checking something. May saw it. Silas saw May see it. And whatever was in that pocket, it made May go even paler. Silas watched them ride out. Then he closed the door and turned to May. His voice was quiet. May, what is he carrying that scares you more than the men he brought? May swallowed, eyes wide. Then she whispered one word, papers. And Silas felt the story shift under his feet, like the ground just cracked open. What kind of papers could turn a wounded young woman into property and turn the whole town into willing witnesses? Silas stared at May when she whispered that one word, papers. He had seen a lot of trouble in his life. Most of it came with fists, whiskey, or somebody waving a gun like it made them brave. But papers were different. Papers could take your name, your land, your freedom, and they could do it while everyone nodded like it was respectable. Silas kept his voice calm. What kind? May swallowed, eyes still fixed on the door like Clay might kick it in any second. The kind that makes the town call me crazy. He keeps a document that says I can't make decisions without him, not without his permission. So those papers were his leash. Signed by Klein, stamped by greed. Silas pulled a chair closer to the table and sat down, slow and steady, like he was giving her the kind of time nobody else ever gave her. May, tell me straight. Did he get you declared unfit? May nodded once. Tears finally showed, but they didn't fall yet. They just sat there, trapped behind her eyes. He said it was for my own good. She gave a small bitter laugh that didn't have any humor in it. He said I get emotional. He said I forget things. He said I need my husband to handle matters. Silas's jaw tightened. That's how he talks in town. May nodded again. And Deputy Klein signs off on it. He told me if I ever tried to leave, he'd show the sheriff the papers. Then they dragged me back like I was a runaway child. She looked down at her hands. Or they'd lock me somewhere. Silas leaned forward. Somewhere like an asylum. May didn't answer with words. She just breathed out. And that was enough. Silas rubbed a hand over his face. Out in the country, a man could handle trouble with rope and muscle. In town, trouble wore clean boots and hid behind a stamp. Silas stood and walked to the window. The yard looked calm now, but calm was a liar. Those men had been here for a reason. They were testing him. They were measuring how fast he would bend. May's voice came soft behind him. He's going to make you look like a thief. He's going to say you took me, and those papers will make it sound official. Silas turned back to her. All right, then we don't let him control the story. May blinked. Out. Silas reached for his coffee pot, found it cold, and shrugged like that was just how days went sometimes. First, you rest. Second, you tell me everything you know about those papers. Who wrote them? Who signed them? Where he keeps them. May hesitated, then spoke like she was walking through a minefield. He keeps copies at his office in town, and he keeps another set, closer. She glanced toward the back of the house like the walls had ears. In the tack room at the Caldwell place, in a little metal box. Silas nodded once. Good. That's something. May's eyes lifted, and for a second you could see the young woman she might have been. If nobody ever broke her spirit, then fear crawled back in. There's more. Her voice dropped. He's not just doing this to me. Silas went still. Say that again. May's hands clenched in her lap. A girl named Lottie Pierce. She worked at the laundry behind the saloon. She told me she saw Deputy Klein take money. She said she was going to tell the preacher's wife. May swallowed hard. Then she vanished. Silas felt the room go cold, even in summer. People didn't just vanish in small towns, not unless somebody made it happen. May wiped her cheek fast, like she was angry that a tear dared show up. And Clay told me, real quiet, that if I ever talked, I'd vanish too. May hesitated, then added one more thing. There is a kid at the livery. His name is Eli. He's the one who sometimes carried notes for me when Clay didn't want to be seen. He's scared, but he's not blind. If anyone in town has seen the wrong thing at the right time, it's him. Silas breathed out slow. He believed her, not because he wanted a villain in his life, but because May's fear had too many details to be a lie. He walked to a small drawer near the stove and pulled out a few things, a stub of pencil, a scrap of paper, and an old piece of twine. Nothing fancy, just tools for a man who liked plans more than speeches. He set them on the table. We're going to make our own record. You tell me names. You tell me places. I write it down. May stared. You think writing it down matters? Silas gave her a small half-smile. It matters when the other guy thinks he's the only one holding paper. He tapped the pencil once, and it matters because if something happens to me, I want the truth to survive me. May looked away, throat working. You shouldn't have to do this. Silas shrugged. Maybe, but I'm already in it. And I don't like bullies. Outside, the wind shifted. A board on the porch creaked, soft, like a footstep. May froze. Silas lifted one finger. He listened. Nothing came through the door. No knock. No shout. Just silence. Silas walked to the door and opened it fast. The yard was empty. No men. No horses. Only dust and the sound of insects buzzing in the heat. But right there on the porch, sitting plain as day, was a folded piece of paper. Silas picked it up and unfolded it. His eyes scanned the page and his face changed. May's voice was barely a whisper. What is it? Silas looked at her. Slow. It's a notice, and it says, Deputy Klein is coming back at sundown. With a warrant for you. So, tell me this. When the law shows up holding Clay's papers, who in Dodge City is brave enough to say no? Silas held that notice like it weighed more than paper. May stared at it, and her face went flat, like fear had finally gotten tired of being loud. A warrant, she whispered. Silas nodded. coming at sundown. He folded the paper and set it on the table. Neat. Like he could tame it by being orderly. May's hands trembled. What do we do? Silas looked at the window, then at the clock, then back at May. He kept his voice steady like he was talking about weather. We don't wait to be surprised. We get ahead of it. May let out a shaky breath. He'll take me. Clay will stand there smiling. And everyone will say it's lawful. Silas shook his head. Not if we move first. Silas got ready the way a rancher does. Quiet, quick, and without a speech, Silas checked the loads in his Colt, then slid it back into the holster. Not planning to use it, just making sure it was there if words failed. Tell me what that warrant will say. May swallowed. He'll say I'm unfit. He'll say I wandered. He'll say I need to be returned to my husband. Her voice tightened. He'll say you're holding me against my will. Silas nodded once. All right, then we make sure you can speak for yourself. May blinked. They won't let me. Silas leaned forward, elbows on the table. They'll try not to, but I'm going to ask you a question, and you answer it loud enough for the porch to hear. He paused. Do you want to stay here tonight? May's eyes filled fast. She nodded. Yes, yes, I do. Silas tapped the pencil. Good. Now we write it down. May looked confused. Silas gave her a small shrug. I'm not saying a notebook beats a badge, but it helps when a badge starts lying. May tried to smile, but it came out crooked. You always talk like this. Silas exhaled through his nose. I talk like a man who's fixed too many fences after other folks broke them. He wrote her words, simple and plain. Then he wrote the date. Then he wrote the name of the place. It's Mercer Ranch, outside Dodge City. May watched the pencil move like it was a miracle. Her voice got quieter. They'll still come. Silas nodded. I know. That's why we do one more thing. He stood, walked to the stove, and poured fresh water into the kettle. Then he turned to May. You ever meet my neighbor? Tom Riggins? May shook her head. Silas nodded. He's old, cranky, and he hates gossip. That makes him useful. May frowned. You're going to get him involved. Silas shrugged. I'm going to give him a chance to do the right thing. He grabbed his hat, then paused. You stay inside. Door barred. If anyone knocks, you don't answer. May's fear flared. You're leaving. Silas walked closer and lowered his voice. I'm stepping out for 10 minutes. I'll be back. And May, he waited until she looked at him. If they take you, won't be because you were quiet. It'll be because the town decided it liked comfort more than truth. May swallowed hard and nodded. I'll stay. Silas stepped onto the porch, mounted his horse, and rode hard across the dry grass toward the nearest spread. The sun was dropping slowly now, and that meant time was getting sharp. Tom Riggins answered the door with a scowl and a shotgun held lazy, like he'd been born tired of surprises. What do you want, Mercer? Silas kept it short. Klein's bringing a warrant at sundown for a young woman, and I need one decent witness who isn't scared of Clay Caldwell. Tom squinted. You picked the wrong county for decency. Silas nodded. I know. That's why I'm asking you, Tom grunted, then looked out and toward the horizon, thinking. Tom squinted at Silas for a long moment. Then his voice dropped. Klein's been dirty a long time. He once put my nephew in cuffs for nothing, just to scare him, and Clay laughed about it at the Long Branch like it was a joke. Tom's jaw worked like he was chewing nails. I don't like you much, Mercer, but I hate them more. He leaned back inside and yelled, Martha, fetch my good boots. Then he looked at Silas like it annoyed him to have a spine. All right, I'll stand on your porch, but if this turns into shooting, I'm too old to run. Silas almost smiled. Just stand there and look mean. You were born for it. Silas rode back fast, dust trailing behind him. When he reached the ranch, May was still inside, still wrapped in that blanket. Eyes fixed on the clock like it could betray her. Silas stepped in and set the lantern on the table. Tom's coming. May let out a breath she'd been holding too long. He agreed. Silas nodded. He did. And I've got one more plan. May's eyes narrowed with worry. What plan? Silas walked to the window and looked out at the yard, at the barn, at the open stretch of land leading back to town. Then he said it, quiet but firm. If Klein shows up with a paper warrant, we're going to ask for one thing: a signature, a real judge's name, and a reason that explains why your husband left you in a graveyard. May's throat worked. And if they don't give it, Silas turned back to her, then we'll know this isn't law. It's a kidnapping wearing Sunday clothes. Outside, the light shifted. That gold summer color turned darker, like the day was bracing for impact. In the distance, a horse whinnied. Silas froze, listening. May whispered, "That's them." Silas moved to the door and cracked it open just enough to see a rider was coming fast from the direction of town. But it wasn't Deputy Klein. It was a young stable hand, pale-faced, waving something in his fist like it was on fire, and he was headed straight for Silas's porch. What could a scared kid be carrying that made him ride like the devil was behind him? Silas opened the door, and the stable hand nearly fell off his horse. The kid was young, maybe 19, with dust caked on his face and panic in his eyes. He was holding a folded bundle of paper like it was the only thing keeping him alive. He wasn't a stranger to May's story either. She had mentioned him by name. Silas stepped off the porch and grabbed the reins. "Easy. You're safe here." "What is it?" The boy swallowed hard. "My name's Eli. I work the livery behind the Long Branch." He thrust the papers forward. Eli's voice dropped to a whisper. "I shouldn't be here. I kept my mouth shut about Lottie, and I still hate myself for it, but I saw something tonight." May appeared in the doorway, blanket wrapped tight, eyes locked on the boy's hands. Eli's voice shook. "I saw Clay Caldwell in the alley behind his office. He was burning papers in a barrel. Deputy Klein was right there, watching." He blinked fast. "And I saw your name too, sir." "Silas Mercer." Silas's stomach tightened. He took the papers and unfolded them, careful not to tear a corner. The top page was a notice, stamped and signed, but the signature line looked wrong. Too clean. Too quick. Then Silas saw what Eli had grabbed before the fire ate it. A ledger page, numbers, names. Short lines that told long stories. Eli pointed with a trembling finger. Right there. Caldwell paid Klein. Not once, not twice. A list. A habit. May's face went pale, then angry. Not loud anger, the kind that finally stopped shaking. Silas read the page again, then looked at Eli. "Why'd you do it?" Eli swallowed. "Because I saw her in Boot Hill." He nodded toward May without staring. "My mama used to say a town isn't judged by its church. It's judged by what it does when nobody wants to get involved." Tom Riggins rolled up just then, slow as molasses, shotgun resting across his knees like he was out for a Sunday drive. He climbed down and looked at the papers. He whistled low. "Well, that ain't law." "That's a con." Silas folded the ledger page and slid it into his shirt pocket. Then he turned to May, voice steady. "May, when Klein shows up, you're going to speak. You're going to say you're here by choice. You're going to say your husband left you in Boot Hill. And if they call you unfit, you tell them the only thing unfit is a town that covers for a man like Clay." May swallowed hard. Her hands trembled for a second, then stilled. "I can do that." She said it like she was surprised to hear it come out of her own mouth. The sun slipped lower. That warm gold light turned thick and heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Then the sound came. Hooves, more than one. Slow, confident. Deputy Klein rode into the yard with 2 men behind him. Clay Caldwell rode with them, of course. Clean hat, clean hands, dirty smile. Klein called out, "Silas Mercer, I've got a warrant." "Step aside." Silas stepped forward, calm. Tom stepped up beside him, looking mean on purpose. Eli hovered near the barn, like he did not know if he was brave or just stuck. Silas raised his chin. "Read it, loud, and tell us who signed it." Klein's eyes flicked, just for a second. That was all Silas needed. A man with truth in his hand doesn't blink like that. Clay's voice slid in, smooth. "Don't make this hard. May needs to come home." May stepped out onto the porch. The blanket was still around her shoulders, but her spine was straight. She looked at Clay and did not flinch. Klein lifted the paper. May spoke first. I'm here by choice, and I begged Silas to bandage me right there in Boot Hill because I was terrified of going back to my husband. Clay's smile twitched. May, stop embarrassing yourself. May lifted her chin. You left me there. In Boot Hill. You thought shame would keep me quiet. She swallowed, breathing hard. It didn't. Silas pulled the ledger page from his pocket and held it up. Deputy, you want to talk papers? Let's talk yours. Klein's face tightened. Clay's eyes sharpened, and the mask slipped for a heartbeat. Just long enough for everyone to see what lived underneath. Tom spoke, loud enough for the men behind Klein to hear. That signature ain't worth spit, and this here, he nodded at the ledger. This is worth a judge. Klein hesitated. That hesitation was the real turning point, because the law only works when the people holding it believe in it. Silas did not draw a gun. He did not need to. He simply stood there, refusing to move, refusing to be scared by a man hiding behind paper. And May stood beside him, not because she needed saving, because she chose to stop running. Clay leaned forward in his saddle, voice low and ugly. This town will never take your side. May looked past him, toward the distant line of Dodge City. Then she looked back at Clay. Then this town doesn't deserve peace. Klein's hand tightened on the warrant. He did not lower it right away. He looked at Tom, then at Eli, then at the paper in Silas's hand. His eyes said the same thing his mouth could not. Too many witnesses, too much risk. Klein finally lowered the warrant. Slow, like it hurt his pride. Then he leaned forward in his saddle and spoke through his teeth. This isn't over. Mercer. He glanced at May, and his smile was colder than Clay's. You step into town again, and I'll make sure you regret it. Clay did not shout. He only looked at May like a promise. We'll talk later. Then they turned their horses and left, not defeated, just delayed. Here's the part that sticks with you. Silas did not set out to change a town. He set out to visit a grave. May did not set out to become brave. She just asked for help in the only place she thought she could survive being seen. So let me ask you something. If you watched a woman begging for help, would you step in, even if the whole town got angry at you for it? And if you were May, would you risk everything to tell the truth, even if the truth makes people uncomfortable? Because in a town like Dodge City, the only thing evil needs to win is good men staying quiet. If this story is hitting you in the chest a little, go ahead and tap like and subscribe for more true stories from the Old West. And tell me this too. What time is it right now where you are? And what town or state date are you listening from?